Dear G20 leaders, as you all who have joined the Paris Agreement should understand, especially after COP26, it is imperative that we keep the warming of our planet to 1.5 degrees to ensure our existence in livable conditions. But even now, at 1.1 degrees, millions of people are already suffering. Last year, more than 7.6 million Indonesians had to suffer and take refuge from climate-related disasters in Indonesia alone. And this number will only escalate as long as we do not reach net zero. The science is clear. To keep 1.5 alive, immediate actions and deep emission cuts are required, and any delay means death. And yes, for years, you have all repeatedly claimed that you are doing your absolute best to reach that collective goal with your NDCs and net zero pledges, but sadly, your actions are painting a completely different picture. Collectively, the G20 countries are responsible for 80% of global emissions, and yet emissions are still on the rise. Even in the case of Indonesia, our commitment to reduce emissions in 2030 are no less than an accounting trick. Using an arbitrary business-as-usual figures as a base year, the so-called reduction is not even a reduction at all. This lack of seriousness in tackling the climate crisis is sadly portrayed in every sector. Despite reaching an agreement to phase down coal in COP26, we are still increasing production and consumption of coal year on year, building new coal power plants in places that already have up to 60% oversupply of electricity, and even expanding the coal market through greenwashing practices. In fact, this energy transition plan was done so half-heartedly that in 2022, Indonesia is projected to have a decrease in clean energy mix because we are literally building generations of dirty energy faster than its clean alternative. The same treatment can be said to the economy as a whole. There were so many discussions about green and circular economies amongst G20 countries, but really, how much money do you actually spend into building these sustainable economies relative to the dirty extractive industries? In Indonesia, we see various G20 countries pouring money into extractive mining, plantation, and infrastructure projects, which have excluded people's welfare every day and everywhere. We see resistance so frequently demonstrated from the locals and indigenous communities who are fighting for their lives, land, heritage, and principles against the business-as-usual ambitions of the authorities, industries, and politicians. There are so many cases of land-grabbing practices that not only kill the local economy and livelihood directly, but also destroys forests and ecosystems in its way, releasing huge amount of emissions and warming up our planet some more, only for the profits of the few. It seems clear that the reason for this continuous neglect to act is the deep conflict of interest and influence of the extractive industries over policy making. When you start championing the profit, you start to ignore the people. But we must remember that business as usual is not even a possible scenario, as there is no economy on a dead planet. By spending money on false solutions and expansion of the dirty economy, not only are you not mitigating, but you are actively exacerbating the climate crisis, dragging us all on a fast-speed train to suffering, mass death, and possible extinction. So my message is this: dear G20 leaders, please stop funding our extinction. You have the power to make that change. Decide today that you will not take part in the suffering of billions, but to put care, solidarity, love, and justice above all instead. We need your real actions, not empty words. We need you to do things better, not make things worse. Declare a climate emergency, redirect your funding to real climate action, go beyond politics, and act now. Failure to act will cause flash floods, crop failure, social collapse, mass death, and possibly have your children and grandchildren hate you for life.